Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Coaching with me, Kevin, and my business is called Business by Design, where we help people perform in their, or help people advance their personal peak performance. And today we have the amazing JenniK from Behavioral Change Specialist. Hello, Jen. How are you?
Hi, Kev. I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited about the topic we're talking about. I'm passionate about it like you are. To kick off first, just give everyone a background and an idea of your areas of focus and what you specialize in, and tell us more about what we're talking about today.
Sure. So, Kev, I've spent the last 12 years studying and working with NLP. Initially, I started doing it as something that I was just interested in for myself as a personal development tool and to help get my own world on track. And gradually over the years, it's become more of a passion and now more of a business focus. So the three areas that I use my training in is NLP-based therapy, where I do a lot of work with trauma clients. I do a lot of work with people who are recovering from a divorce and just day-to-day private sessions. Then in the business space, I do executive coaching and leadership development. And I work with Cedric from Inspirito NLP, and we offer internationally accredited NLP practitioner training for practitioner and master's level.
Fantastic. Jen, so today, as you know, the Lunchtime coaching sessions, as I'm sure people are catching on with, there's so many of them already. We really want to add value, but we want to have, chat about conversations that really pique interest and understanding about why coaching is so important. And I know today's conversation is value-driven leadership. What is the purpose, structure, and the basis of value-driven coaching? So don't you want to tell us more about the topic we're chatting about today?
Sure. So, Kev, when it comes to coaching, it's a very broad topic. There are loads of different approaches. So my approach to coaching is really focused on value. The questions we want to answer is, do I add value? Do I grow? Do I elicit value? Do I inspire growth? And do I bring about a growth mindset? Am I igniting the people around me? So that's really the aim of the coaching that we do. And with every client that we work with, there are specific tangible goals. So every business, every individual has specific goals that they set out to achieve. And basically we work with them to achieve those goals, but we work from the inside out.
Yeah.
So, what I mean by that is when I'm working with a client in a coaching mannerism, I'm not presenting training. I'm not acting as a mentor. I'm working with them to consolidate all the information and the input that they have to become more effective and to implement it in a way that they can then influence other people. And that starts with the individual. So the aim is to bring about real, tangible, measurable change that has been integrated into the fiber of who you are.
Absolutely. So in terms of one of the clarifications that I want to just touch on as well is, what is the aim of coaching versus training and mentorship? How would you classify the difference?
Sure. So the way, and again, this is my frame of reference. So the difference for me is that training is very much aimed, it is an information-based thing. You are teaching new theories, new ideas, new models, new ways of thinking. You're giving people tools to add to their toolbox. It's an external thing, and yes, the way training is facilitated, you obviously, in that process, you want to give people a real experience of what you're teaching, but the ideas are outside of you. Mentorship is really the opportunity to model someone else's success. So typically, if I go and I look for a mentor in my work environment, I look for somebody who has been doing what I need to do, has been achieving what I need to achieve, that I want to learn from. So they're offering historic knowledge and experience. They are there to encourage, to advise, and offer that technical on-the-job training. They're my soundboard. And again, I'm using that mentorship relationship to gain external experience and ways of thinking and ideas that I can then add to my toolbox. Coaching for me is where we integrate all of it, where we take all of those tools, all of those ideas, all of those, that success that we have available to us to model, and we integrate it on a very deep level. So we basically are working on a conscious and an unconscious level. We are applying it in a way that becomes real for the person, and makes sense and fits who they are, how they are, and what their values are, so that it's no longer just a theoretical idea, but they've actually been able to turn it into their own, and where the change in how they approach things is so fundamentally shifted internally that it becomes natural and their new way of doing things. So for me, that's really the difference in terms of those three.
Now, in terms of getting an executive coach and working in the sort of leadership space, who would we choose, or who, if someone's watching this video today, who would they choose to work with in an organization to bring about change? And who would that be? And what are they how do we know that that's the right person? Okay.
So, Kev, I suppose the question is, who is initiating the coaching relationship and why? If I look from an organizational perspective, for me, the most effective way to bring about change is to work from the inside out. So, if you look at it, the old structure of, the sort of hierarchical structure is very outdated. It's very limited, and it's very one-dimensional. I think, we've now progressed to a space where business is happening in a far more organic way, that, your power to influence is more of a ripple effect rather than a dictatorship. You're there to inspire, to grow, to lead, and to draw the best out of other people as opposed to dictate and monitor. So for that reason, I would say that the starting point for an organization in any kind of coaching relationship is to start with your leaders, the people that need to be powerful influencers, the people that are in a position to do the most harm to your organization if they are poor leaders. So that would be my natural place to start.
Fantastic. And in the current state of the economy, organizations have to be mindful of spending. And I think that's, that goes across the board for big corporations and, small business SMEs. But essentially, in your opinion, why do you think that, I know from my perspective, I would suggest that anyone and everyone who can have a coach, get a coach. I also have a few coaches that I speak to, and you being one of them. So, why would you recommend a coach for executives, specifically in the time that we find ourselves?
So, Kev, we're at a time where every cent counts. Every bit of energy counts, and people's mindset and approach to how they're going to shift and change with the way things are shifting and changing very rapidly now, is really fundamental to whether they're going to succeed going forward. And the scope for ineffective leaders is really just not there anymore. So I think the question is actually, can you afford not to be paying attention to effective leadership at this time? There is no scope for somebody who is incapable of embracing the greater knowledge of their team. there is no scope for somebody who is limiting the expansion of an organization with a rigid mindset. It's that will think your business at the moment. We really need to be flexible. We need to be adaptive. We need to be solution focused, and looking for creativity, looking for people who have the energy, who have the resilience within themselves and the tools to get the best out of everybody around them to guide this process and get us there.
Absolutely. So, Jen, lunchtime coaching is about adding value to whoever's going to be watching. And I know you sent me some information with stuff that we can really practically implement. So I'm going to name a few of the points that you shared with me, just so that we can touch on that for anyone who is watching. And the very first thing is, what is the purpose? So on purpose, a lot of people struggle to find that purpose and to kind of get it wrapped or get their brains wrapped around that. What about purpose, and why is this important?
Okay, Kev, sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat that sentence because you cut out. So I didn't get what you actually asked me.
Sorry, man. The information that you shared with me, one of the key elements that we start off with is, what is the purpose? Why is that important for leaders to understand right now? And how do we get our brains wrapped around purpose?
So the purpose of each organization will differ. I think it's really important that the leadership are able to clearly define and communicate the purpose to their team, so that everybody is very clear on where they're going. That old dictatorship style leadership, one of the problems with that is that people were working in the dark. It was very seldom that they were told where they were going, so they couldn't contribute to the growth.
Yeah.
Whereas if we are communicating a clear purpose, then we are at the same time putting an invitation to people to help get us there, to come up with ideas, different ways of thinking, knowing where it is that we're taking the organization. So purpose is quite fundamental in that.
And I think as we started with the value-driven leadership and having value-driven coaching, also, I find that also being a key element to how to get people's brains on board with why they're doing what they're doing. For me, it's a case of, is there practical tools that you often use in your sessions as a coach that you drive people through sort of a value exercise?
So, Kev, when I'm working with individuals, values is key to any real change. Our values, now, people have very different ideas of values. You cannot tell somebody their value. You cannot impose values on somebody. And most values that drive behavior are actually unconscious. We're not necessarily aware of the value that's driving our behavior. So when I'm working with a client, I'm working with deep values, and I have quite a specific approach to that. But in terms of ideas that people listening today can actually take and go and apply to themselves, I think a good starting point is to start with, as I said, the model we use is inside out. So start with know yourself. And that concept of knowing yourself is massive. There's, it's sometimes quite tricky to define ourselves, and we change constantly. So I was listening to a talk that Matthew McConaughey gave a little while ago, and I loved the way he put it. One of the things about knowing yourself, if you get too fixated on defining who you are, you're also becoming rigid in who you are. And everything I do aims to expand, aims to create flexibility, aims to create more options. So I loved what he had to say about, instead of asking, looking at knowing myself and knowing who I am I not? When you can define who you're not, that's where you still allow for flexibility. But you can be very clear on what goes against your values, what you are not prepared to do, and who you are not prepared to be. When you know that, you can proceed forward quite strongly, because your moral, your core value that drives you is strongly in place. So that's one question that I would encourage people to consider.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful way of referencing it, just to add to what you're saying, Jen, because it also creates wonderful contrast. Because very often we kind of go, okay, well, this is not who I am. But the moment you know what you're not, you make room for what you are. So and framing it that way really gets my brain to change when my focus lies.
Exactly. And when you're focusing, if you just think about if somebody asks you, what kind of music do you like? My standard response is, it's easier for me to tell you what I don't like, because I like variation. So we want to be able to expand. We want to be able to grow. One of the things that when we look at what we are not, it's not only looking at where is my, what fits my values and what am I not prepared to compromise, but also we're having an open, we're having an honest look inwards and saying, what am I not great with? What do I not have the ability to do? And, what can I then address? Is this something that I can change within myself? Is this something that I need somebody else to step in and fill a role that, because it's just not my strength? So it's more than just a moral value based question. It's an honest question.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, we both did training with NLP way back when we started, so we both had that passion to really understand, those drivers. And someone recently, and I just want to mention it, someone recently asked me, so what is the difference between cognitive behavioral therapy, counseling, and NLP? And I really, because I wasn't quite sure about the exact difference there. And the beauty of what I sort of discovered was NLP in itself really wants to function from the root cause, right? And really get your brain wrapped. And that's why, values tie so beautifully into this, because when you have more indication about, like you're saying, knowing yourself and knowing what you're not, giving room to what you are, it's a beautiful way of really understanding that root of where I can function from. And I think, it's, when COVID started, for example, I was having a lot of like, oh my goodness, like what the hell am I going to do now kind of moments. And I literally went and did a simple values exercise with myself. And I was like, okay, cool. So let me understand what my values are. Again, and relook at that, because values change. What I value today is different what I might value in 6 months, and COVID's really pushed that button for me. And for me, being able to do this with you, and we're sitting somewhere in different parts of the world possibly, and I mean, that to me was really high up on my value list, right? And so, because freedom is one of my highest values. So the fact that I could sort of express myself and engage with people from a freedom perspective, I kind of went, wow, yes, that's what's happening. And that's why the drive to be able to connect with people nationally and internationally became such a big part of, lunchtime coaching and all the stuff that I'm doing online now. So, I think it's a beautiful way to understand how NLP, as much as people may know about NLP, I don't think a lot of people know how well and how impactful NLP can really, really transform how you do life on a day-to-day basis.
And Kev, one of the beauties of understanding what your unconscious value is and understanding the structure of how we do things is that it's not just bringing about an awareness of this is something that's important to me, but it's creating the opportunity for flexibility in how you take care of that. So, I mean, as you know, a lot of the times there might be something that we're doing that's detrimental to ourselves. But when when we dig down and we find out what the value is, we can come up with alternate ways to approach it that will take care of that value, which makes it safe to change that behavior. The other thing that as you were talking, that I wanted to just point out in terms of, what is NLP and how, how does it work differently to other things, is that while we do work from the root cause, we don't dwell on the root cause. And to be quite honest, I do a lot of private therapy where I'm working with people who've been through some hectic traumas. And, your older, more traditional approaches were to discuss and go over and over and over and over and over the same thing until the person is just numb to it. The problem with that is that you've just reinforced and re-experienced and reinforced over and over and over again, and you haven't actually dealt with it in a healthy way for them. You haven't actually added to their life through the event. You've just helped them suppress and become numb.
Yeah.
So what I love about NLP is that, yes, we have a point that we identify that we work from, but it's very solution-based. And I don't need to know all the deep, dark secrets and the nitty-gritty details to be able to take you through a process that will help you take something positive from it and turn it into the fuel that's going to get you to where you want to go. So, that's one of the things. I recently had a client who had quite a traumatic experience. She had an armed robbery at 3:00 in the morning, and her kids were there, and they have the means through their organization to apply for counseling. The problem is that they first have to speak to somebody and explain to them what happened to justify why they need the assistance. From there, this person then refers them to the appropriate person that can work with them, and they then need to explain again what it is that they're needing to work with before they get the help. So you're taking somebody who's had a deeply traumatic experience, and you're putting them through that experience on their own twice before you're even there to help them through it.
Yeah.
So I think the ability to work with things like that without getting stuck in and spending all the time analyzing the past is really empowering and exciting.
Absolutely. And, one of the things you mentioned a little bit just now, a little bit earlier, was the flexibility. And one of the things, and I have used this in training and coaching, and it comes up, the presupposition of NLP, that is the law of requisite variety, that speaks about the person with the flexibility of behavior will have most influence on the system. And whether that, whatever that system really is for you as an individual, as a leader in a corporate business, as the person that shows up in their world, in their day-to-day activity, I think it always brings it back to, so how flexible am I in how I'm behaving, and how is that ruling the system? And you can apply that to almost everything in the world, right? And bringing it back to the values again, the more valuable or flexible I am in understanding who I am without creating that rigidity, the more flexible I am about how my life plays itself out. And the feedback that I'm getting, I'm going, okay, cool. Do I get stuck there, or am I taking the option of learning from it? But as we both know, we can carry on talking like this for hours. So if you could leave us with just maybe five or three practical tips that we could take away from today's session, Jen, what would that be? And and then we're going to chat about just quick on where we can get hold of you.
So, Kev, I think some of the questions that I'm going to pose for somebody who's sitting in a position saying, okay, am I on track? Where am I going wrong? Is, to ask those questions, what am I not? To do a little bit of a SWOT analysis. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Be honest with yourselves. Look for feedback from people. Go and have honest conversations. And regardless of whether they give you feedback in a way that you like or not, pay attention and say, is this a pattern that I'm seeing? Start from the inside out. What frustrates me? What hinders me? What's getting in my way? And if I'm leading a team of people, how am I frustrating, hindering, or getting in the way of these people? Start asking questions so that you can better understand. And then just in terms of mindset, I wrote down a couple of sort of comparative words here, and just assess your environment and say, does my team do I dictate or inspire? Do I drive, or am I igniting other people's energy? Do I take an active solution-based approach? Is my team in an active solution-based mindset? Or do we work from a passive problem point of view? Am I constantly getting, but this doesn't work and that doesn't work, with no suggestions? Are we stuck? Are we rigid? Are we flexible? Am I creating, or am I working from a place of fear? Is fear driving me? Or am I being driven by curiosity? Am I encouraging an environment where people can be bold and curious, and where mistakes are embraced as opportunities? Do we give feedback to tear people down, to lift ourselves up, or do we give feedback to look, do we receive feedback to learn? Do we give it to build people and to work together? So those are just some questions to consider in terms of what is the mindset, and what mindset do you want for yourself, for your organization, for your family even.
Absolutely. So Jen, thank you for that. I think that's fantastic, and the value in asking those questions really get your brain wrapped around with, well, how do I answer this, and what is it for me? It's a beautiful way of thinking about it. If people want to get hold of you, where do we get hold of you? What's the easiest for that?
So pretty much on most of the social media things, if you type JenniK, JenniK NLP, you'll find me. So Facebook, JenniK NLP, Twitter, JenniK NLP, and my website is jenniknlp.com.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jen. I'm just going to leave us with the feature program that we have for leaders at the moment. It's the EML program. It's a method of motivation, self-esteem needs, leading the way to change, using innovation to succeed, and leading into the future. And that's the EML program with one of the as a licensee for LMI. And all of that can be seen on businessbydesign.co.za. All of this information that we are sharing is going to be in the description box of the video. So anyone can see this on YouTube and on Instagram. And lunchtime coaching happens every other day at 12 o'clock. There's a whole lunchtime series. We've got lunchtime leadership, lunchtime coaching. Next week, we're going to be chatting to some psychologists about the lunchtime mental health, mental wellness. So that's really, and mental health really, and that's really exciting. So every day at 12, please join us for that. Jen, thanks so much for joining me. And I'm just going to leave us with a quote that we all have problems. The way we solve them is what makes us different. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful time, and chat to you soon. Jen, thanks for your time, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Kev. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.